Pluck Universe. Pluck is courage and determination under fire. We interview real people with real stories as they seek to strengthen their pluck. In today's episode, we dive into some projects from big to small and in between. We'll start out by talking about my idea to build a cabin for cash. Along the way, you'll hear about a nail gun injury, near-death experiences, standing on a roof with the Sawzall during a pending thunderstorm, and in part 2, calling 911 to report a dishwasher. Enjoy the show and be sure to check us out on pluckuniverse.com and follow us on social media at pluckuniverse. Well, let me just welcome you guys to our episode 2 Pluck Universe podcast. I'm Hunter Hansen, my brother John Hansen, and joining us today is Neftali Serrano. I'm a psychologist. My brother's an attorney, and Neftali is also a psychologist. Been friends for a long time. And we've all tried our hand at different projects and over the years. And so it's probably be fun to tell a story about what my latest project is and kind of hear about your projects and interests. Get an update on that.
To share.
Huh?
I got some brief skills to share.
I figured. So for me, it kind of started. I mean, I've been building stuff forever. After college, I worked as a carpenter for 3 years, and it just kind of stuck with me. Despite I mean, my boss told me, he's like, you should never be a carpenter.
Why is that?
Well, I shot myself in the leg with a nail gun. I nearly blew myself up running over some rebar with a dually that was filled with gas tanks. The gas tank's full, and punctured the tanks. I don't know. I mean, I really should. I mean, I almost died. I backed a truck into a house one time. I mean, I was just
accident prone.
So all that to say is he was high maintenance, unreasonable expectations. That's really what that was about. But
sounds like a jerk boss. What a jerk.
What an ass. Yeah. Yeah. So that's how it started for me. I got into it and enjoyed it and was building stuff. But this cabin is my third new build, and I also remodeled the house. So it's a fourth house for us. My first house I ever owned was one we built with a contractor. So before the cabin, we had built a house in Louisiana, which no one should ever do because it's a flood zone. The whole state is, right. And it's a hurricane zone. And
it's Louisiana.
And it's Louisiana, so it's tricky getting anything done there. That's the nice way to put it. But so I can say, the building inspectors were fired on our project by the city. So the city fired them. So that's how bad it got. It was crazy, and it took forever. And I had a contractor, and it was terrible working with him. Because every time we would try to save money on the project, he was like, "Oh, that's good," and we would never see the money. He's like, "Oh, guess what costs more? This costs more." He was walking out of there with his money, one way or the other, and he told us we couldn't do stuff that we could do. And anyway, it was just a nightmare. And I was like, I'm never using a contractor again. So we were in that. I almost sold that house. So we finished the house. I was like, I don't even want to live there. And we almost put it on the market before we even moved in because I was so disgusted with it. It was a nice house. I mean, it was featured on a blog, a design blog for a house plan site and stuff. It turned out really nice, but it was just such a stressful thing working with all that. So anyway, I sold it after we lived there a year and a half. I sold it and took the money. I thought, you know what? I just want to be my own contractor. And the other part of it was working with the bank. That was a pain. They were difficult. Right. And I was like, I don't want a bank. I don't want a contractor. I just want to build something myself. And that's kind of hard to do because I didn't walk away with the whole balance of I owed a lot on that house. So I had a little bit, I got out of it, a fair amount. And so I thought, well, and then, during the pandemic, we went to LJ, Georgia, in a cabin. I was like, well, this is nice. And I wonder how much these are. I was like, I couldn't believe how much these cabins cost. They're like a little 800 square foot cabin. A lot.
lot.
And I was like, this cabin we stayed in, it was 800 square feet. It was a little tiny thing, and it was like listed for like $300,000. I was
And
like,
that's where the idea came from. Let me ask you this. All your
yeah,
previous constructions, were they all for you to live in until this?
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah,
how it is with all the stress of those previous projects, how did
yeah.
this become attractive, and why would you stay sane by building a really a voluntary headache project for profit? What led you to that versus I'm just going to build a house for us to live in?
Yeah. It was the scale of it. I mean, it's something I've wanted to do. And the whole sanity thing is, for me, I have to be on the edge of insanity to be happy. I think I have to be pushing myself. I have to challenge myself, and I think outside the box. And so I can't just do it the normal way. I have to, I want to think of a different way to do it. And so that's constantly driving me. So
Yeah, but I think you should out yourself to the audience a little bit here. I totally agree with you, Hunter. Being your friend for many years, you're definitely an out of the box. It's like you're just askew to the line, right? You're not parallel to the line. You don't like working inside boxes, things like that. But there's
yeah,
also a little bit of an element that I've ribbed you about for many years now, which is you are cheap, man. I mean, if there's a
yes,
cheaper way to do something, you're
I
gonna
will
do
save
it.
yes,
Yeah, and you'll
I
drive yourself into the
will.
ground sometimes trying to accomplish something at a lower cost, where most of us would have been like, just
Yeah.
hand you the money, just take the headache.
Oh, I've been ribbed for that for years. Even my brother and sister would make fun of me because I would go and get generic brands at the store, and they were like, "This stuff tastes terrible." I was like, I'm not paying for craft cheese. We're getting Four Winds cheese."
This will save 20 cents. It's like, how does it all add up at the end of the day?
Yeah,
It's really make a damn difference.
So yeah, so I mean, it's true. I mean, that's part of it is like, well, I'm just gonna say, I'm gonna build this, and I've made money on all my builds, the first
Right.
house, the second house, and so
There's a
that's
profit
reinforced
factor.
my idea. So yeah, it's a kind of attractive idea. I liked the idea of living in the mountains, and so it's somewhere that we might end up living at some point.
Are you for sure going to sell it, or just when it's done, or maybe live in it for a
I
while? Or
think
you
so. We're gonna try and sell it because if we were gonna move up there, I'd want something a little bigger. It's a 720 square foot. So we went up to LJ. We stayed there in a cabin. I said, "This is nice. I like it up here." I started looking at what you need to build to get running out, and it's like, wow, the project can be, a smaller project, and I could still make some money on this. And there was some affordable lots up there, and so I actually started though. It didn't really. I got mountain fever up there. I was like, I gotta have some place in the mountains. But then I actually started in North Carolina because the mountain fever had actually struck years ago when I was up there in Brevard, North Carolina. I was like, oh, I like it up here. I got to get back here somehow. And so I thought, well, instead of building in Georgia, I'll just build North Carolina. So I went up there and looked at lots and everything, and just couldn't find anything. Almost bought one place, but the guy next door would stand out on the road with a shotgun and challenge anybody that came down the road, and with the gun, saying, state your business, kind of thing. So I decided,
it would have been a good opportunity to practice both your psychologist skills and your
right, exactly.
construction skills.
Neighbor from hell kind of situation. So we didn't. It was a nice lot, but yeah, it was terrible. It was a little too far out too. So, and thank goodness, because man, building. I mean, I was at Louisiana when I started this. Driving 8 hours to go work on it was just terrible. It's horrible. But anyway, we ended up finding a lot there and started the building project. But it kind of started. I was like, I wanted. My goal was to have a paid for house that was, and I wanted to build something new. And then I saw a window of opportunity with building a cabin and went for it and found a lot, and been going at it for 2 years now. That was 2 years ago that I did that.
What's the
And
first
So,
step? I mean, how do you break ground, so to speak? I wouldn't even
I mean,
know all like what you start with. You got
you
this plot
drop,
of
I drove
pretty,
all, yeah, no, it's crazy. I mean, even before that, I saw so many lots. My realtor, which was a real sweetheart, it's hard to find anyone that wants to help show you lots because they don't make anything on these lots. I mean, these lots are like 30 grand or less. So they don't, I found someone was, she sent me a list and I would just use GPS to find these places. And I was driving all over, all over the mountains, and some of these lots were just sheer cliff lots, and unbuildable and stuff. So yeah, that took a while. But once I finally decided on one, the first thing you got to do is get a survey. And this one already had one. It had been surveyed though like 50 years ago, a long time ago. And so I paid a surveyor to just come mark the lots, and he did the lines. And so he came out and did that. And then I started tried to find somebody to work. The real challenge was getting anyone to do work because I don't even live there. They don't know me. And I'm hiring them to do this work. And they're like, I'm going to give you all this work and I don't even know where you live or who you are, this kind of thing. So we ended up being evacuating out of Louisiana during a hurricane, and we're staying in another cabin. And the guy next door was working on doing some work, clearing the lot. And so I went over and talked to him. He's like, yeah, I'll go clear your lot. And so he went over there. He's like, you know, it's really hard to see where the lot is exactly. He's like, they've marked one corner, but you can't really see. He's like, I'm kind of scared to just like start clearing stuff without knowing. So I called the surveyors, like, he's like, well, actually what he said, the guy that was clearing, is like, I don't think this is right. I don't think the survey's right. And I'm on the phone. I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this. He's like, yeah, I don't think this is marked right. This doesn't make sense because my GPS is telling me something different. And so I called the surveyor and he went out and looked. He's like, yeah, it's not right. I said, man, I paid you to go out there. He's like, you pay me to mark the survey as it is. He's like, but the survey's changed. That was 50 years ago.
oh man.
And apparently like land shifts and stuff or something. So they ended up I spent $3,000 to get it resurveyed. This is a third of an
very,
acre lot.
very
3
first
grand.
step of this was a
Yes. And that's
kerfuffle.
when I knew this was the right thing to do. It was confirmed. My
And
poor
just
wife, I think she just, I honestly don't know why she puts up with me with this crap, but
well, by now she knows what she's in for,
she wasn't surprised.
she's different. But for people who haven't seen it, you should know that the surveying part is even more important given like the actual land it's on. Like it's like on a hill, a really
Yeah.
pretty steep hill with a steep driveway, and the house itself overhangs the hill on the front
Yeah.
side and then backs up to, I mean, woods essentially. And I think there's another property back there, right? Of some
Yes.
sort. And so like, yeah,
There
that
is a
first step of
house.
surveying,
Yeah.
pretty stinking important.
Yeah. No, yeah. I mean, he was right and pointed it out correctly. And I found out the hard way that
How different was the new survey from the 50-year-old one? Is it that
fortunately it
different?
was only 50 feet.
That
Holy
seems
moly.
So
did your wife ever try to talk you out of this cabin at some point?
no,
She's
She
down for the
knows.
plan.
She knows.
she's willing to, she doesn't like it, but she's accepts it.
Are you talking about
She
you or the
like,
captain?
well,
Both.
depends
They're
on the
both
day. Don't ask her today is all I can say.
cabin's a metaphor for everything that is
Yeah,
Hunter.
yes. Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. How many, by the way, Hunter, how many years have you guys been together?
27.
27. Yeah, you're just a couple of years ahead of us. And yeah,
Yeah.
so yeah. Once you have
Yeah,
that many
she's,
chips on the table,
yeah.
like, all right, I know I
Yeah.
know what game I'm playing.
The thing is, we worked great together on the project. She has helped me design it. So I designed it from the ground up. I drew it, planned it, purchased all the materials, got, subs to come out there and do a lot of it. but she helped me design it, and we really enjoy it. And like I said, the last house we finished turned out really nice.
Mhm.
So
she
but
can't hate it that much. I mean, if she,
no, it's more of the uncertainty, like when we get a phone call, like your survey's not right, you may not own that. The weird thing is that happened in Louisiana. We got a phone call after the guy went out to clear it and called me. Same thing happened. When I went out to clear the lot, he's like, yeah, you don't own this lot. I was like, yeah, dude, I just bought it. He's like, no, you own the lot next door.
Mhm.
And I called the closing attorney. He's like, yeah, we screwed up. We sold you the wrong lot.
I remember you going through that whole process. That house was just one thing after another. It felt
Yeah, that
like,
was the beginning of that one.
yeah. I think one thing that is a good sort of lesson to learn when you're doing this kind of thing is you may go through protracted suffering. Like
Yes.
there's certain projects that just go step 1, step 2, step 3. Every step
Right.
you have this like, hardship that you have to either decide you're going to
Yeah.
persevere or you're going to quit on it. Right. And
Yeah.
if you don't have the stomach for it, that idea of quitting on it starts really nagging at you. And I
Yeah.
remember you at that Louisiana house going through that, almost start to finish.
Yeah.
Less so, I would say, with this project. I don't think you got to some stressed out points with this project for sure.
yeah.
And some parts where you're
It's
like,
been a
why
lot
am I doing
smoother.
this? All that, once you get over the hump though, I think you handle it really well.
Thanks. Well, it confirmed that the contractor, in my experience, I'm sure there's a lot of great ones out there. And our first one was really good in Auburn. But I guess after you do it a while, and plus the construction background, I just had this thought. It's like, I bet I can pull this off. And so it's been kind of gratifying to have that. But yeah, it's kind of a love-hate relationship. And I think I just have a lot of those, relationships, the things that I like to do, riding motorcycles, playing electric, playing guitar, just whatever, it's just, I have moments where I just want to throw the guitar against the wall or whatever. Sold my motorcycle, got sick of it, that kind of thing. But
Legal question for you back on the property. So what about insurance? What about if you get sued by somebody who gets hurt on the site? How are you handling all that?
that took forever to find, because what we've always had is a builder's risk policy. It's what it's called. But I had a hard time getting one for the Georgia property.
Subs sign that, and then if they get hurt, they cannot sue you. They have to use
No,
their
that's
own.
just a policy. They consume the policy.
Right. It's
if
that
they get hurt.
insurance policy for the subs.
It's just for the whole. Yeah, it includes that. It includes workers. It includes risk to the building.
Is that expensive for a project like this to get?
It's just hard to find. I had a hard time finding anyone that even did it. A lot of the local insurers there did. I actually, after I found a national insurer to do it, I did find a local one that did. So it just took some hunter. I didn't even know what to call it. I had forgotten what they were called because I never had to do it myself. So that's it's starting to search like insure construction. It's like it just took me a long time to even figure it out what I needed. But yeah, I got a builder's risk policy, and so it's been a journey. And I'll go up there once a month or twice a month to work on it, and I'll load up my tools, and I always forget an important tool. Always. Does not matter. I was like, I think I've got everything. This last time I got there and I didn't have a hammer. A hammer, no hammer. I was like, what am I gonna do? I'm doing framing and I have no hammer. I had to go out and buy a hammer. So
Neftali, what have you done on the project, or how many times you've been out there?
Oh man, more times than I should. So my dad, it really starts with my dad. My dad is a retired auto mechanic, but really he's sort of been a handyman. So he's done virtually everything you can think of from a practical standpoint. He's one of these sort of, he has an engineer's mindset. So he's done all kinds of plumbing, electrical, carpentry, rough and finish. And then of course he's great with cars. So I grew up with that example. And I always felt pretty lesser because I was the kind of kid who was more of a heady kid, you know, I smart, good at school, book knowledge, things like that. And in fact, that actually caused conflict between me and my dad because we were like two different cultures, it felt like. And it wasn't until I became an adult that I just started saying, well, I can take some risks in areas that I'm maybe don't think I'm good at, but I can try, right? I can try to change the brakes on my car with my dad helping. And by then our relationship had repaired, and, you know, I felt more comfortable asking him to help me with the skills that, you know, for him were really intuitive. So I just started taking more risks with things, but, you know, and most of the time that worked out pretty well. I would say the one that in retrospect I probably shouldn't have done is I put in a skylight. But you know, sort of the backdrop to that is just I had where we were living in Madison, Wisconsin at the time. So I'm a New York City kid, you know, in the Midwest by marriage. So Madison's my wife's hometown, and Madison has long, dark, cold winters, and I was like starved for sunlight. And
Yeah,
John can relate.
Yeah,
I've been here for about 10 years now in
He's
Milwaukee.
in Milwaukee.
oh, that's right. Yeah, so you know what I'm talking about. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I just got so desperate, and this was when we had little kids, which in retrospect, like, why are you putting a skylight when you got little kids too? But I was like, man, I'm gonna punch a hole through this. It was a little house, it was a ranch style 3-bedroom house, tiny bedroom. So you can think about probably 1,600 square feet, the entire house. And I was like, I want to poke a hole in this thing, because the other thing was our main window faced away. It was a northern facing window. So like, I'm going to poke a hole. I think I can poke a hole there. It felt simple enough because it's just got, you know, fairly basic attic, you know, fairly basic structure to it. And it was the kind of thing where I kept researching, doing YouTube, you know, doing things. And then it got to a point where it builds, where I'm like, okay, it's this threshold. I'm either going to do it or I'm not going to do it. And I just felt like I just had to, for my mental sanity. Problem is, I picked a day, like the day that I picked to actually cut the hole in the ceiling. The forecast called for thunderstorms and lightning later that day. But I was so psychologically like invested in getting this thing done that I said, screw it. I'm going to go up there. I'm going to get this done. How hard can cutting a hole in a roof be? So I get up there, and I'm telling you, my hands were shaking. I've got, you know, what do you call those? What do you call that?
Sawzall.
Sawzall. So I've got the Sawzall up there, and I'm shaking because I'm like trying to mark out where I'm supposed to cut this thing. I finally mark it out. I feel fairly confident going inside the attic, coming outside the thing, that I'm cutting where I'm supposed to. Of course, it's all complicated because there's a chimney fairly nearby, and by regulation, you're not supposed to put a skylight within, I think it's like 12 inches or something of the apex of the roof. But I was like, no, I'm going to do it. I want to do it my way. Like, you know, idiot. Like, I don't really understand why this rule exists. Anyway, I finally make the first cut. Once I make the first cut, the sky is turning gray and dark. And I'm like, all right, I'm invested. The cut is made. I've got to follow through now. Like, I can't just like stop.
Right.
Neighbor comes around by, looks at me and is like, you know, it's going to rain later today. I'm like, yeah, I know it's going to rain later today.
Thanks, buddy. Thanks.
Yeah. So I
Oh my
work as
gosh.
hard and as fast as I can to cut that hole for the skylight. And I believe, if I remember correctly, yeah, it was just a single skylight rectangle in between, if you know, the spaces between the trusses there, or the ceiling joists. And I cut it. I don't even remember how much I got done that day. Oh no, I was able to at least get it on there. I didn't finish the roofing around the skylight, but I was able to cover it enough. And when I got down, I was like shaking. I was just shaking from the sheer effort and anxiety of having cut a hole in my roof, and then
Yeah.
trying to figure out the rest. So that
That's
was
funny.
weeks. That was weeks of working on that, because the other part I hadn't anticipated was how hard it was to actually cut the sheetrock on the inside of the tunnel, because you have to frame the tunnel for the skylight from the roof to the ceiling.
Right.
And that part I hadn't really thought through. So the finished product, and where the sheetrock had to come down, where the roof joists were, was not perfect. So it was at angles. So there's this trigonometry to how you had to cut the sheetrock.
Oh,
So that if
wow.
you can imagine, like in my mind, it was all going to be a perfect rectangle, right? Perfect
Right.
rectangle up in the roof, perfect rectangle on your ceiling. It wasn't. It was more like trapezoidal. And so I had to,
Uh-huh.
yeah. For
So do you
anybody who's ever
regret
tried to
doing
do
it?
that, it actually, I didn't end up regretting it at the end. I will never do it again. I'll never
Yeah.
do it again, because I understand my limitations skill wise. I'm not
Yeah.
that good at cutting sheetrock
Yeah.
and measuring stuff. And it worked for that house. When we went to sell it, that's when I was really kind of concerned, because when we went to sell it, there was a little bit of leakage on the interior. And that's when I learned why that rule is in place around where you put the
Yeah.
thing near the apex of your roof. So, I got it sealed up enough, and it passed inspection and all that, which is crazy. I don't know how that thing passed inspection, because none of that was to code for on any level. Oh yeah, that's the other thing. I didn't take out
You
any
didn't get a permit.
permits or anything.
I
So
get it though, living up here, being that desperate for light, just something most people take for granted in the country, but sunlight in Wisconsin is at a premium around February or March. That's when you reach your lowest
Yeah.
Yeah.
seasonal effect disorder ever. It's so dark and cloudy for months and months and months and months and months. So I
Did
get
you
that.
like having it?
yes, yeah.
Yeah.
It definitely let in a whole lot more light. We got the southern exposures on the southern side of the roof. So
Well,
again,
who
I
knows
felt
how you would
really
have turned
proud.
out if you didn't. If you hadn't done it, you may have just gone insane from light deprivation.
Yeah, I mean, I think
It may have saved
well,
you. What almost killed you almost saved you.
in a small way, you're exactly right, Hunter.
Hey, thanks for listening to part 1 of How to Stay Sane Building a Cabin for Cash. Stay tuned to part 2. We appreciate likes and subscriptions to our podcast. Be sure to visit us at pluckuniverse.com or on social media at pluckuniverse.
Pluck Universe.